what really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. Look up in the sky. It's a bird. It's a plane. It's Super Tuesday. And obviously, everybody's at the polls right now. Little bit difficult down there in Tennessee because apparently something like 10% of the polling places got knocked away in the tornadoes. Anyway, we've got a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, ready to answer the phone when you call on in with your comments, questions, and opinions. So anyway, if you'll remember yesterday's show, toward the end of it, we all of a sudden got this emergency broadcast message on our TVs and cell phones saying that we were under a tornado watch, and there were tornadoes, apparently 22 so far. They don't know. They could be more. Were killed in Nashville. The tornado just ripped through the downtown and just huge amounts of damage. There were other tornadoes, but they came down in farm fields and in the wooded areas, so they didn't really cause a lot of damage. At least one up in Missouri, and probably nobody knows just how many came down, except the people with the Doppler radar. But really a lot of destruction down there in Nashville. So it's kind of a new experience for us. We're used to tsunami warnings, and since we were living on top of a hill, we never really took them seriously. But yeah, everywhere you go, there's going to be something here. So let's talk about Super Tuesday and the candidates here. The polls are going to start closing on the East Coast in about another 2 hours. And the polls are all over the place. And of course, everybody's saying this is going to come down to Biden and Bernie Sanders. Anyway, the Boston Herald Super Tuesday endorsements: Republican Donald Trump, another term needed of pro-America Trump. Seems rather redundant, if you ask me. Bernie's asked if the Democrats are staging a coup against him. He refuses to answer. Now, he's currently the front runner in the race for the Democratic nomination for president. Even though Biden won South Carolina, Bernie is still ahead on the total number of delegates. And he refused to answer during an interview on CNN whether the Democratic Party was trying to take the nomination away from him again, like they did back in 2016. Meanwhile, you have Jewish leaders saying they're in a fight against Bernie Sanders at AIPAC. This all comes from his decision to boycott the meeting, which used to be a soapbox for presidential wannabes. And so far, Bloomberg is the only one who showed up. Now, let's see. Jewish leaders are in a fight against Bernie Sanders. That sounds to me like foreign interference in our electoral process. So, meanwhile, the Democrats are starting to converge around this demented candidate, Joe Biden, and keeps doing these gaffes. And a lot of people are saying, what the heck is wrong with this guy? So apparently back in January, the Democratic leadership was saying that they were planning on installing Joe Biden as the candidate. To heck with what the Democratic voters want. You Democratic voters, you don't count. You don't. We don't care what you think. You should have learned your lesson back in 2016. Don't even bother showing up to vote. We're going to pick the candidate for you. So, story coming out of Investment Watch blog: Pete Buttigieg suspended his campaign under the direction of the DNC in an effort to build the most possible momentum around Biden. The DNC has shown time and time again that it does not want Bernie to win the nomination. Well, I'm sorry, guys, but aren't you supposed to leave that up to the voters? I mean, that's the way the system is supposed to work. We, the people, in the primaries, pick the candidates. Then in the general election, we pick a president and a bunch of senators and members of the House and so forth. But we're supposed to have complete control of the process from beginning to end. Of course, we all know today that the candidates are vetted. They're pre-approved by the military-industrial complex and the medical-industrial complex and Wall Street. And so by the time we actually walk into a voting booth, all we've got is our choice of which puppet will sit in the Oval Office. And since it doesn't really matter which one we vote for, we go for the one with the best clothes and the best hair and so forth and so on. By the way, speaking of looking good, right now with all the people who've already dropped out of the Democrats, Tulsi Gabbard is the only Democratic candidate left who's under the age of 70. Think about that one for a while here. So Joe Biden is doing his gaffes again. He jumbled the preamble of the Declaration of Independence, all men and women created by, you know, the thing. And he talks about how much he's looking forward to Super Thursday, where he's apparently going to run for the Senate, right, Chuck? All righty. Anyway, Joe Biden supporters at a Texas rally are saying that they wish Biden was younger, but he's the best that we've got. But they are concerned about his many mental lapses. I mean, the reality here is that Biden, if he becomes the nominee and if he defeats Trump, he's not going to be the president. You know, they're going to turn the White House into an old folks' home, and he'll sit at the desk and he'll look good. And the real leadership decisions will be made by people in the shadows. I don't think that's a good model for our government, kind of like Reagan in his last term. All right, we're going to do a shout out now to our Honor affiliates who are just now rejoining the network. Let's see, Never Trump leader Bill Kristol is endorsing Joe Biden. So they're really piling on, yes. And tonight we're going to see if these endorsements really work or not. Wouldn't it be just a delicious, delicious surprise if tomorrow we get up and Bernie has swept Super Tuesday? There's all these people who've got these huge egos that say, if I come out and endorse Joe Biden will win. Well, if he loses, you're going to have to reevaluate your own sense of self-importance, I think. Apparently the GOP is, if Bernie Sanders leads the Democratic ticket, if he's the presidential nomination, they're convinced that he'll just roll over underneath Donald Trump's steamroller, and that will allow them to divert more resources from Trump's presidential campaign to the House. And what they're getting ready to do is they're going to focus on targeting the deep blue states and try and turn them red. Actually, I would go for the borderline blue states and turn them red. Now, Bloomberg, as I said, he went to AIPAC and he told AIPAC he'll never impose conditions on military aid to Israel. So he pledged to support Israel's security and constrain Iran's nuclear program at the annual pro-Israel AIPAC summit in Washington, while also criticizing Senator Bernie Sanders for boycotting the annual event, which has been a lightning rod in the 2020 Democratic primary. Bloomberg is out there attacking Sanders over his AIPAC criticism, saying he's dead wrong. Sanders is an outspoken critic of Israel, good reason to vote for him. Proponent for Palestinian rights, another reason to vote for him. Announced last month that he would not be attending AIPAC's annual conference because it was a platform for leaders who express bigotry and oppose basic Palestinian rights. Then he called Netanyahu a reactionary racist. I'm starting to like this guy more and more. Meanwhile, Congressman Betty McCollum is not backing down from her criticism of AIPAC. She's saying, I have a right to speak up. And she lambasted AIPAC. The U.S. legislator vowed to continue advocating for the human rights of Palestinian children and push against all attempts to silence her. The friend of Israel has become a political liability in this day and age. Back to Bloomberg, as you know, he's staunchly anti-gun, and yet he himself is surrounded by armed security. And so somebody actually challenged him on that at the Fox News town hall last night. And basically, Bloomberg kind of dodged the question and said that he faced more threats than others due to being wealthy and the former mayor of New York City. So Mike thinks his life is more valuable than yours and deserves to be safeguarded by retired police officers because he's got the money to pay for the detail. But even though you can afford a handgun, you really shouldn't be able to, you really shouldn't be allowed to defend yourself. That's Bloomberg's attitude. And we've seen that with a lot of other politicians. Feinstein is anti-gun, but she carries one. You know, guns are okay for the elites, for the leaders, but not for you ordinary peons. Well, here's a little bit of good news here. Judge Royce Lamberth has ordered former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton to submit to a sworn deposition by Lawyers for Judicial Watch over her use of a private email server and all emails connected with the events in Benghazi. And the judge basically said that her earlier answers were cursory at best, unclear, and vague. So he issued the order. Well, Hillary's stuck. She has to show up. Otherwise, she's in contempt of court. So slap those bracelets on her and haul her off to prison. A U.S. federal judge has threatened to hold Concord Management, which is a Russian company indicted by former special counsel Robert Mueller, in civil contempt if it does not present subpoenaed company records in person. This is U.S. District Judge Dabney Friedrich demanded that St. Petersburg-based Concord Management supply her Washington, D.C. court with subpoenaed company records by sending someone tasked with record keeping to deliver them from Russia in person. She rejected a sworn statement. So, Russiagate's starting to unravel. Okay. Senate Homeland Committee Chairman Ron Johnson plans to force a vote to issue the first subpoena linked to his probe involving Hunter Biden and the Ukrainian energy firm Burisma Holding. Wouldn't it be nice if all this stuff came down? And of course, you know why they let it all sit till here, because now we're going into the election season. And people are going to be talking about, oh, those Democrats and their private email servers. The Russiagate, oh, those Democrats behaved so badly against our president. Timing is not a coincidence. All right, there's been a bit of a stink here where Judge Randolph Moss ruled that acting Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security Ken Cuccinelli was illegally appointed to lead a department agency. Cuccinelli, my mistake, saying he will not leave his post. Okay. That story. So where's the outrage over Israel and Netanyahu trying to interfere with the U.S. election? And you know, it seems like the focus is always on Russia, 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 Russia. Even when I was a kid, you know, the commies are subverting our country. And our nation has been subverted, but the commies had nothing to do with it. We were all looking in the wrong direction. And it's like today, they don't even try and hide the fact that they're mucking about with our electoral process. It's like that story we had earlier. Jewish leaders, you know, are in a fight against Bernie Sanders. It's none of your business. Unless you're a U.S. citizen, but the article implies that this is all coming from Israel itself. And AIPAC, even though it's not required to register as an agent of a foreign government, is acting in that capacity. They got all these special exemptions where they're not required to report certain things. Just gave the country away to them. Anyway, everyone's saying, oh, it's Putin, it's Putin. No, it isn't, it's Netanyahu. Okay, in the area of corporate media, MSNBC has resigned Chris Matthews, and he did his resignation speech live on air. Apparently, or at least we're being told, what triggered this was a GQ columnist who revealed he made sleazy remarks about falling in love with her when she was a guest on Hardball. In other words, he flirted with her. Now, he's had a few other comments that raised some eyebrows, like when he berated Senator Elizabeth Warren in a post-debate interview and compared Senator Bernie Sanders' Nevada caucus victory to Nazi Germany's invasion of France in 1940. But he's 74 and maybe he's ready to retire. But I have a real problem with this whole Me Too situation in that in the present circumstance, the present political climate, that what would have been considered harmless flirtation just 20 years ago is now, oh, it's an assault. I'm offended. I'm offended by the fact that you think I'm beautiful. And I told this story before. But back in the 1990s, when feminism was really taking hold and you weren't supposed to admire women, you weren't supposed to look at them, all that craziness, I did some work in Germany. And in Germany, completely different environment. The women in the office expected you to flirt with them and tell them they looked good. And if you didn't, your paperwork would get lost. These things are a matter of fashion. There's no absolute carved in granite statement about how men and women should interact. It's all being manipulated by those for political advantage. So anyway, let's talk about the coronavirus. Things are really kind of crazy over there. Apparently the death toll reaches to 3,120. Over 91,000 cases reported globally. There are 9 dead in the United States, all of them in Washington state. Kind of wondering what that really means. Death toll from novel coronavirus disease in mainland China rises to 2,943. The number of confirmed cases has increased by 125 to 80,151. So it's still growing. It's still growing out there. Down in South Korea, the death toll has reached 4,800 infected. Over in Iran, and this is kind of curious, 23 Iranian members of parliament and the head of the emergency medical services are confirmed for coronavirus. Iran now officially claims at least 2,336 cases, 77 dead. Members of the parliament have been hit hard. And saying probably the numbers are going to go a lot higher there. So Iran is getting ready to mount a major sterilization campaign. They've announced plans to mobilize 300,000 soldiers and volunteers against the deadliest outbreak of the coronavirus outside China. And it has not escaped the notice of a lot of people that COVID-19 seems to be striking hardest at countries that are on the United States government's does not get a Christmas card list, namely China and Iran. Now, I'm still holding to the accidental release theory, but more than a few people have suggested, maybe this was something that was deliberately created by the United States. And they dropped it on China to wreck their economy and their workforce, and now they've dropped it on Iran. Can't rule it out. Can't say it's impossible. Anything is possible right now. Okay. Over in New York City, a school has shut down over coronavirus fears, and apparently somebody there is suspected to have the virus. They're not saying who it is, student or parent or teacher, but it could have ripple effects across the vast school system. In a separate development, Governor Cuomo announced Tuesday morning the state had confirmed its second case of the virus, a 50-year-old man who lives in Westchester County and works in Manhattan. Unlike the first case confirmed in the city, a woman who'd recently traveled to Iran, the new patient has no known association with previous coronavirus hotspots, suggesting the virus is now spreading locally. The man did have an underlying respiratory condition. Age, pre-existing conditions, apparently for some reason, if you smoke, you're more susceptible. Over in Great Britain, they've had a grade school kid tested positive. The other day, I'd made a point that nobody under the age of 15 had the coronavirus. That turned out to be incorrect. I have some hard numbers for you here in a very short period of time here. Over in Europe, Nike has now closed their European headquarters after an employee contracted COVID-19. Nike has temporarily closed its European headquarters in the Netherlands due to an employee contracting coronavirus. Approximately 2,000 employees from 80 different countries work at the massive facility in Hilversum, North Holland. Out of an abundance of caution, we're conducting a deep cleaning of the campus. Well, that would definitely be a good thing to do here. Okay, there are 18 confirmed coronavirus cases in the Netherlands at the time of this writing. We got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
Okay, that concludes this rebroadcast. This is a rebroadcast. We're testing the live stream. There may be some more this evening, so stay tuned.